Tywin Lannister appears for the first time in the 7th episode of Game of Thrones. By that stage, he already feels like one of the most important men in the story. The series builds him before it shows him. His name passes through private conversations, royal arguments, military decisions, and frightened warnings. People calculate what he will do. His children imagine what he will think. Men who have never shared a scene with him understand the danger of provoking him. When he finally enters the story, the audience is meeting a man whose shadow arrived 6 episodes earlier. That preparation gives his introduction enormous power. The harder achievement comes afterward. Game of Thrones has to keep him as large as the reputation it created. It does this through Charles Dance's performance, careful staging, and a very specific idea of authority. Tywin rarely needs to display his power directly. Other people display it for him by changing their voices, their plans, and sometimes the fate of entire kingdoms when he enters the conversation. If you enjoy essays about how Game of Thrones builds its characters through small details, subscribe to the channel. It helps us keep making them. Tywin's first trace can be heard in the first episode. Jaime and Cersei are discussing the danger left behind by Jon Arryn's death, and Jaime imitates their father's voice. "We're Lannisters. Lannisters don't act like fools." The impression is brief and mocking. It still tells us how the family works. Cersei and Jaime are adults with access to the king, royal guards, and enormous wealth. They continue to carry their father's judgment around with them. He has trained them to think of the family name as something that must be performed correctly. A foolish act becomes larger than a personal mistake. It embarrasses every Lannister who came before them and every Lannister who will come after. Tywin has turned the name into a standard no living person can comfortably satisfy. Robert adds another piece a few episodes later. During an unusually honest conversation with Cersei, he says her father wants to own the world. Robert is the king. He has defeated a dynasty, crushed a rebellion, and spent years surrounded by Lannister servants, squires, and money. Even he describes Tywin through appetite and scale. Tywin wants more than influence around the throne. In Robert's mind, he wants possession. The realm also lives on his money. The crown owes House Lannister millions. Cersei is queen. Jaime commands the King's Guard. Lannister guards fill the capital. Tywin has arranged his family so close to the throne that he can shape royal power from Casterly Rock. He can remain far from court because his gold and his children are already there. That distance helps the legend. We hear the machinery and cannot yet see the man operating it. Catelyn Stark's seizure of Tyrion finally gives the machinery a direction. Jaime attacks Ned in the street and leaves the capital. Gregor Clegane begins destroying villages in the Riverlands without carrying a banner. The lack of a banner fools nobody. The mountain is known as Tywin Lannister's Mad Dog, and the attacks answer Catelyn's insult without requiring Tywin to sign his name beneath the bodies. Ned responds in open court. He strips Gregor of his titles, sentences him to death, and summons Tywin to King's Landing to answer for the crimes of his bannermen. Pycelle and Littlefinger react as though Ned has reached toward a sleeping animal. Tywin is identified as the richest man in the Seven Kingdoms. Littlefinger warns that gold wins wars. Ned asks why Robert is king if Tywin's gold is so decisive. It is a good line. It is also the kind of line spoken by a man who still believes royal office and legal authority will force powerful people to obey. The following episodes destroy that belief. This is Tywin's introduction before his introduction. His son starts a street fight. His soldier burns villages. The hand of the king summons him. The court worries. The king is absent, and Tywin's response is already rearranging the country. When Game of Thrones finally shows him, he is skinning a stag. The scene was created for the television series, and it may be the best character entrance the adaptation ever invented. Tywin is not sitting on a throne. There is no crowd waiting to applaud him. He is working with his hands while Jaime reads from a letter and tries to explain the trouble he has caused. The stag is the symbol of House Baratheon. Tywin methodically cuts apart the animal while discussing the war that will consume Robert's kingdom. The image gives the audience an easy piece of foreshadowing. Its greater value comes from the behavior. Tywin can carry out a bloody task without losing the thread of a political conversation. He never hurries. He never looks overwhelmed. Jaime, one of the most dangerous fighters alive, becomes a chastened boy beside him. Charles Dance does very little to announce the importance of the character. His voice stays measured. His posture remains controlled. He lets Jaime spend the energy. This becomes the foundation of Tywin's presence throughout the series. Other people arrive upset, frightened, defensive, or eager to impress. Tywin usually waits for them to reveal what they need, where they failed, and how much control he has over the exchange. He is also unimpressed by the heroic version of Jaime. The realm sees the Kingslayer, the beautiful knight, and the man who can defeat almost anyone with a sword. Tywin sees his heir wasting his future. Jaime wants recognition for attacking Ned. Tywin treats the attack as a stupid act that left the family exposed. Jaime worries about what people say. Tywin tells him that a lion does not concern himself with the opinion of sheep. The sentence sounds like complete confidence. I think it also reveals the insecurity underneath his entire life. Tywin talks constantly about ignoring laughter, gossip, and disrespect because those things matter to him deeply. His father Tydos allowed the Lannister name to become weak. Other lords took advantage of his generosity and laughed at his lack of control. Tywin built his identity around making sure nobody could ever laugh safely again. The Rhaenas of Castamere learned the price. Their destruction became a song, and the song became portable fear. Tywin does not need to explain the history every time someone challenges him. A few notes can deliver the warning. His reputation functions like an army that reaches a room before his soldiers do. The stag scene also establishes his central obsession. Jaime has talent, beauty, and fame. None of it satisfies Tywin, while Jaime remains in the Kingsguard and leaves the future of Casterly Rock uncertain. Tywin speaks about the family name surviving for 1,000 years. Individual happiness has no serious place in that calculation. His children are temporary custodians of something he considers much larger than them. He sends Jaime with half the Lannister forces toward Riverrun. War begins as an extension of family discipline. Catelyn took a Lannister, so House Tully must be punished. Ned challenged Lannister authority, so the Starks must learn what the name costs. Tywin turns a private crisis into a public demonstration because allowing one insult to stand could invite another. The war quickly proves that his reputation is larger than his military perfection. Robb Stark deceives him, attacks Jaime's army, and captures Jaime. The young commander Tywin dismissed becomes a serious threat. Tywin does something important after the defeat. He admits they have underestimated Robb. That ability keeps him dangerous. Tywin can revise a plan without performing humiliation for the room. He may resent the truth, and he still uses it. He sends Tyrion to King's Landing as acting hand because Cersei and Joffrey are losing control of the capital. Tyrion is the child he despises most. Tywin recognizes his usefulness when the family requires it. This is one source of Tywin's scale. He appears more disciplined than almost everyone around him. Joffrey acts from impulse. Cersei often mistakes suspicion for strategy. Jaime begins the story trusting his sword to solve political problems. Tyrion can see several moves ahead, then allows appetite and resentment to complicate his choices. Tywin converts emotion into policy. The conversion gives him an almost inhuman steadiness. Season 2 extends that impression at Harrenhal. Before Tywin arrives, Lannister men torture prisoners, waste labor, and behave like petty sadists. His arrival changes the temperature immediately. He sees useful workers being destroyed and orders the waste to stop. His morality has not awakened. He simply dislikes disorder that produces no advantage. This distinction matters. Tywin's violence is often presented as cleaner than Joffrey's or Gregor's. It can therefore feel more reasonable. The people in the Riverlands experience the same burned farms, dead children, and ruined homes. Tywin keeps enough distance from the suffering to speak about it as strategy. Arya gives the Harrenhal scenes their unusual energy. She serves as his cupbearer while hiding her identity. Tywin notices that she speaks like someone born above her claimed station. He tests her, corrects her, and gradually enjoys her intelligence. Arya has survived by becoming smaller in the eyes of powerful people. Tywin is one of the few who actually looks at her. Their conversations make him more human and more impressive at the same time. He can recognize intelligence in a girl his soldiers would dismiss. He speaks to her with a degree of interest his own children rarely receive. The scenes also expose a limit. Tywin realizes she is lying and keeps her close without discovering that she is Arya Stark, one of the most valuable missing people in Westeros. His confidence in his ability to read others stops one step short of the truth. Arya eventually tells him that anyone can be killed. The warning lands because she has already named him to Jaqen H'ghar before changing her choice. Tywin sits across from a child who briefly held his life in her hands, and neither of them fully understands how close the danger came. His enormous public reputation cannot protect him from threats his worldview refuses to recognize. The Battle of the Blackwater increases his stature through timing. Tyrion organizes the defense of King's Landing. He prepares the wildfire, manages Joffrey, rallies the defenders, and leads men outside the walls after the king abandons them. Littlefinger secures the Tyrell alliance. The Tyrell army supplies the numbers that turn the battle. Tywin arrives at the decisive moment and takes command of the victory. The next episode understands the power of an entrance. Tywin rides a horse into the throne room and is proclaimed savior of the city and hand of the king. Tyrion wakes wounded in a small chamber and learns that his authority has vanished. The visual contrast establishes the new order without needing an argument. The son who saved the city from inside its walls is pushed aside. The father who arrived with the winning army receives the title, the ceremony, and the memory. Tywin knows that history belongs to whoever controls the room after the battle. Season 3 places him in that room permanently. One of the finest examples comes from a small council meeting. The other members have selected seats that express their position around the table. Tywin enters, slowly drags a chair to the head, and sits. The scraping sound lasts long enough to become uncomfortable. Everyone watches. A piece of furniture becomes a declaration of government. The series repeatedly gives Tywin power through such choreography. He stands while other people sit. He continues writing while someone asks for his attention. He pauses before answering. People walk long distances across his chambers to reach his desk. The staging forces them to enter his space and wait for permission to matter. Tyrion's request for Casterly Rock becomes one of the cruelest versions of this arrangement. Tyrion has just helped save the capital and asks for the inheritance that would legally pass to him while Jaime remains in the Kingsguard. Tywin refuses with language designed to injure every insecurity Tyrion carries. He blames him for Joanna's death in childbirth, questions whether he is truly his son, and threatens to hang the next sex worker he finds in Tyrion's bed. Tywin describes this cruelty as protection of the family legacy. In practice, he is damaging the person whose intelligence has repeatedly protected that legacy. He can identify the strategic value of Tyrion and still cannot release the hatred attached to his birth. The contradiction stays hidden for a while because Charles Dance delivers prejudice with the tone of a verdict. That tone is central to the show's portrayal. Tywin rarely sounds as though he is offering an opinion. He sounds as though the world has already agreed with him and everyone else is late to the meeting. It makes his worst judgments feel settled until events challenge them. He treats Cersei with the same cold accuracy. She believes he distrusts her because she is a woman. Tywin says he distrusts her because she is less clever than she thinks. He can see her vanity, Joffrey's instability, and Tyrion's hunger for recognition. His insight gives him control over the family. His lack of tenderness ensures that each insight becomes another weapon. The marriage plans make this explicit. Tyrion will marry Sansa Stark, giving the Lannisters a possible claim over the North. Cersei will marry Loras Tyrell, securing the alliance that saved King's Landing. Their wishes barely enter the discussion. Tywin calls it duty because duty sounds cleaner than ownership. He spent his life making the Lannister name larger than its members, and now the members are expected to disappear inside it. Joffrey presents the clearest test of Tywin's authority. Joffrey has the crown, the throne, and the legal right to command. He also depends on Lannister troops, Lannister money, and Lannister administration. When he explodes during a council meeting and announces, "I am the king," Tywin replies that any man who must say those words is no true king. He orders the exhausted king taken to bed. Nobody stops him. The scene makes Tywin feel larger than the throne itself. He understands power as the ability to produce obedience. Joffrey owns the title. Tywin controls the conditions that allow the title to survive. Even Tyrion, who enjoys seeing Joffrey humiliated, is stunned that his father can dismiss the most dangerous boy in the realm like a noisy child at dinner. The Red Wedding expands this authority across the map. Robb Stark remains undefeated in battle, so Tywin changes the form of the war. He gives Walder Frey and Roose Bolton the assurances they need to betray Robb under guest right. The slaughter happens far from King's Landing. Tywin's presence sits behind it. Afterward, he asks Tyrion why killing thousands in battle is considered nobler than killing a smaller number at dinner. He says he ended the war to protect the family. The arithmetic has a brutal logic. It removes the terror experienced by every person inside that hall, the destruction of an ancient custom, and the hatred planted across the north. Tywin accepts that hatred. He wants the Northerners to remember. Fear has solved earlier problems for him, so he assumes enough fear can secure this victory too. The Boltons receive the North. The Freys receive Riverrun. House Lannister remains above the arrangement, wealthy and apparently untouchable. I think this is the height of Tywin's image and the beginning of its collapse. He has won a war without defeating Robb in the field. He has also created a peace that depends completely on people continuing to fear the name behind the agreement. There is no love holding the coalition together. There is very little legitimacy. Tywin himself is the guarantee. Season 4 opens with him melting ice, Ned Stark's Valyrian steel sword, into 2 Lannister blades. The sequence contains almost no dialogue. The Stark weapon disappears into a furnace while the Rains of Castamere plays. Tywin turns the symbol of a defeated house into material for his own family. It feels like the final act of a conqueror who can reshape history itself. One sword goes to Jaime, along with another attempt to force him out of the King's Guard and back toward Casterly Rock. Jaime refuses. Tywin can command armies and arrange royal marriages. He cannot make his preferred heir accept the future he designed for him. The refusal is quiet, which makes it easy to overlook. It represents a serious fracture in the legacy plan Tywin treats as the purpose of his life. The Iron Bank sees the danger clearly. When Davos asks who truly holds power in King's Landing, the answer is Tywin. Davos immediately asks what happens when the 67-year-old man dies. Behind him stand a young king, a hated queen, and Jaime's damaged reputation. The Lannister regime appears stable because one person is carrying far more of it than anyone admits. Joffrey's death gives Tywin another chance to demonstrate his unnatural composure. While Cersei grieves beside her son's body, Tywin begins teaching Tommen. He asks what makes a good king and guides the boy toward wisdom. The lesson is politically sound. Its location is chilling. One grandson has been dead for minutes, and Tywin is already constructing the reign of the next. He moves from that death into negotiation with Oberyn Martell. Dorne carries a long grievance against the Lannisters over Elia Martell and her children. Oberyn directly accuses Tywin of ordering Gregor Clegane to murder her. Tywin denies it, offers access to the mountain, and gives Oberyn a seat at Tyrion's trial. He turns accusation into a bargain because every conversation becomes easier for him once he discovers what the other person wants. Tyrion's trial looks like another piece of Tywin's control. Jaime offers to leave the Kingsguard and become Tywin's heir if Tyrion is spared. Tywin accepts almost instantly. Tyrion will confess, take the black, and preserve the family from scandal. Jaime will return to Casterly Rock. One prosecution repairs 2 children at once. Shae's testimony destroys the arrangement. Tyrion refuses the script and demands trial by combat. Oberyn dies. Tyrion is sentenced to death. Tywin continues to behave as though another solution can be imposed later. He has spent years assuming every member of his family will eventually accept the role he assigns once enough pressure is applied. The final scene removes every layer that helped him look enormous. Tyrion finds Shae in Tywin's bed. Tywin had threatened to hang the next sex worker he found with Tyrion, and now the same man has brought Shae into his own chamber. The discovery exposes the private appetite hidden beneath public discipline. Tywin has built authority by treating his preferences as necessity and everyone else's preferences as weakness. Tyrion confronts him in the privy with a crossbow. There is no armor, war table, council chamber, or army. Tywin still tries to manage the exchange. He calls Tyrion his son when the word might save his life. He promises they can return to his chambers and speak with dignity. Even with a bolt inside him, he reaches for control of the room. Tyrion finally answers the family argument that has governed his entire life. I am your son. I have always been your son. That sense cuts through Tywin's idea of legacy. Tyrion is part of the legacy. The hatred, humiliation, and violence Tywin poured into him belonged to House Lannister too. Tywin wanted the family name to survive beyond his children while refusing to understand the children who would have to carry it. The son he tried hardest to reject becomes the person who ends his life. His death on a privy deliberately shrinks the giant. The great lion dies half-dressed, trapped in the most ordinary and undignified position imaginable. The series does not erase his power. It reveals the human body underneath the performance. His absence proves how much he had been holding together. The Boltons immediately understand that their protection has weakened. Cersei begins making decisions without anyone capable of restraining her. The alliance with the Tyrells deteriorates. The Faith gains power inside the capital. Jaime cannot replace him. Tyrion has fled across the narrow sea. The Lannister system continues to possess gold, titles, and soldiers, yet it loses the central will that made those pieces move together. This completes the pattern established before his first scene. Early in the story, Tywin is absent and his influence keeps expanding. After his death, he is absent and the arrangements begin falling apart. People still say his name. This time they say it while explaining why an old promise may no longer be trusted. Game of Thrones portrays Tywin as a giant by giving him more than authority. It gives him gravity. Characters define their position by their distance from him. Jaime wants his approval and eventually rejects his plan. Cersei tries to become him while inheriting his certainty without his patience. Tyrion spends his life wounded by Tywin's contempt and proves to be the child who understands power most like him. Joffrey wears a crown and becomes smaller whenever his grandfather enters the room. Charles Dance completes the construction. He gives Tywin the calm of a man who assumes interruption is temporary. His voice rarely rises because a louder response would suggest that someone else had affected the terms. His stare turns silence into pressure. The performance makes thought feel physical. The show also leaves enough evidence to challenge the legend. Tywin is surprised by Robb, depends on the Tyrells at Blackwater, fails to identify Arya, misunderstands all three of his children, and creates alliances that weaken after his death. His greatness lies in discipline, political instinct, and an extraordinary ability to convert reputation into obedience. His failures grow from the same source. He believes people can be organized like armies and marriages can repair wounds created inside a family. For 4 seasons, he often appears correct because he keeps winning the immediate exchange. The realm pays the longer price after he is gone. Tywin wanted the Lannister name to remain powerful for 1,000 years. He made himself so central to that power that the family could barely imagine surviving without him. The giant shadow protected them while he lived. It also kept his children from growing into anything he could respect. When the shadow disappears, the gold remains, the castles remain, and the famous name remains. The structure begins to collapse anyway. That is how Game of Thrones makes Tywin Lannister feel larger than almost anyone else in Westeros. It introduces him as a voice in other people's heads, turns him into the still center of every room he enters, and ends his life by showing the cost of building a legacy around one man.